Thank you so much for being here today. It's been really fun seeing the chat over on the side. It looks like there's a few other Chicagoans in the chat, and so it's good to see all of you here today. My name is Cassidy. I am a Principal Developer Experience Engineer at Netlify. You can find me Cassidy on Twitter, on GitHub, on CodePen, on all of those different platforms, and I'd love to hear from you and get a shout. And I'm also here on Twitch as well. So I might have mentioned my job title already. Again, I'm over at Netlify, and I have been coding for a really long time. I've been coding since I was about 13 years old, and I also have a CS degree. Between my full-time job and my internships, I've had more than 10 different roles in this industry. But outside of all of these roles, the most important thing in my entire career has been my community, not necessarily the jobs that I've had. Some people call it my network, some people call it my resources, some people call it my friends, my mentors. I often just call them my friends. But the people in my community that I've met through conferences, through hackathons, through meetups, through school, through jobs, through events, chat rooms, even Twitter, they're by far the most important aspect of my career, because I would not be where I am today if it weren't for my community. And I have a theory that no matter the field, if one doesn't have a community around them, they won't stay in said field. And I feel like that's especially true in tech. It's often hard to find your own community. And so I want to talk a little bit about that first. So to be able to find your community, there's all kinds of different options for you out there. So first of all, there's conferences and events. You are in a conference right now. So chat with people in this chat room and get to know some people through social media, through special interest groups. Twitter is an amazing place to find people with hashtags like Code Newbie and 100 Days of Code. There's Facebook tech groups for pretty much any special interest you might have or any language that you might have. And there's also Discord channels and sometimes you can find them for certain streamers. Sometimes you can find them for different subreddits and special topics that you might like. Especially now in a pandemic atmosphere, online communities are thriving. And being able to find that community where you can feel comfortable, where you can talk to people, where you can feel included is so, so important. And not only is finding that community important, but also maintaining a community. Both community leaders and community members are key parts in maintaining a community. And if anything, the community maintainers are and the community members of that community, you're going to get tired of hearing me say the word community, let me just tell you, are really important, because you are a part of this growing thing, this thriving thing, this thing where you want everybody to be able to have a resource, someone to talk to, and someone to grow with. And so to maintain a community, to be a part of a thriving one, there's kind of three pillars that I like to describe when talking about how to keep one thriving and keep one going. And these three pillars are advocacy, accelerating or acceleration, and advising. If you have these three pillars in your community, you're doing well. And so first of all is advocacy. Advocacy in a community means that you're publicly recommending and supporting each other. And the most common example of this that you might not consider is a code of conduct. Just having a code of conduct in your community shows that you're caring about everyone, that you're making sure that everyone is in a good environment, a safe environment, a healthy environment, that they can talk to leadership, that they can report if things go wrong. Having that kind of code of conduct is important. Everyone should know what you and your community stands for in general. Positive feedback in public, too, is really great and encouraging to other people. If you have constructive feedback for someone, if they're not asking for it in public, message that to them privately and give them that constructive feedback in a very small setting. But when you're trying to commend someone, when you're congratulating them on something, when you're thanking them for something, do that in public and really just kind of boost each other up. Because when you have that in a community, that makes it so healthy and that makes it so exciting, because people want to continue giving back to their community because they like being thanked. And that's kind of it might feel like a selfish way to go about it, but it's really true. People like to be recognized, and being one that recognizes others and then one that's eventually recognized yourself, it's great. And it's all about, again, publicly recommending and supporting each other. The next part of this, oh, you know what? I should have probably put this slide up. publicly recommending and supporting each other. The next one is acceleration and accelerating each other. And that's all about bettering each other. And this kind of builds off of the previous one. Through friendship, through scholarship, through sponsorship, mentorship, calling each other out, community is all about bettering one another. You're helping people get opportunities. And then as you're helping people get opportunities, they also will help each other. And as you give back to your community and try to help each other grow and help each other get better, that fosters a kind of culture that makes everybody want to help each other get better. When you are asking questions in the community, that means that people can answer them and then you can help them by answering their questions. It's all about giving back and kind of paying it forward every single time you're trying to move, move along with your community. And then finally, the last pillar is advising. And this last one, this part is one that I think is maybe not the strongest pillar, but it's a very, very key pillar that I really want to nail home because advising, the one thing that a lot of people think of when you're advising others is mentorship. And that's something that I really want to emphasize to you. Fostering a mentorship culture is, again, all about giving back. And there's this phrase that a mentor once told me called lift as you climb. As you are going up in your career and as you're going up in your community, in your interests, in your pursuits, you are kind of finding new territory. And you might find people in front of you who know what they're doing and you can ask them questions, but soon you're going to be that person to someone else. And it's important that as you are climbing up this ladder of success, jungle gym of success, you're bringing people along with you and you're lifting as you climb. Because as you help other people in your community, then they can help the people below them. And it, again, fosters this giving culture that betters each other and that also pushes each other to do well in this community and foster a thriving environment. So the best way to combine all of these things together to the next part of this talk is to teach your community. And this part I really want to nail home because it's not just about improving the community, which yes, it is, you're improving each other, but it's also supporting learning in your community and supporting learning yourself. And teaching works. Teaching is not only a great tool to build your own skills, but also to build the skills of others. And there are constant studies consistently say that when you teach others, you retain information better. And honestly, I am an example of this. When I was in college, I was a part of a learning community, and it was great because eventually, as I was becoming an upperclassman, I became a peer mentor. And that involved helping underclassmen with their homework and with certain assignments and with certain projects. And just by doing that in college, I was suddenly able to retain that information better than I would have if I had just taken the class and then moved on to the next one. And then as I got into my career and into my professional environment, I started teaching classes as well. Where when I was first in my first job out of school, my sister and I, we actually taught an HTML and CSS course on O'Reilly. And I had known HTML and CSS. I had been doing it since I was 13 years old, but actually teaching it and knowing the nuances of it so you could teach other people, that changed things for me. And I started to also teach community workshops to just kind of help people at a local community center as well as online just learn HTML and CSS. And then a few years later, I decided, I'm going to teach kind of a more intermediate and advanced React course. I wanted to kind of show people online how they can learn React because there are resources out there, but not ones that I personally would want to take. So I thought I might as well make it myself. Teaching that course made me understand React to a whole other level than I thought I ever could, because I was thinking about, okay, how do I want to explain this information to other people so that way they can retain it, so that way I can explain it if they ever had questions as well. And then from there, I started teaching React workshops, and it ended up being my full-time job for a while, where I was teaching workshops around the world of just people learning information on React and making sure they could get all the nuances of React hooks and understanding how to put more complicated React applications together. And after that, I started making more advanced React online classes, which are online now, not to do a shameless plug, where you can learn more advanced nuances of React. And what's been cool about all of these teaching experiences is as I've been teaching, I've been able to refine what I know because I answer questions from people. When I was teaching workshops, I might teach something a certain way, but people found one aspect of my workshop confusing. So I refined it a little bit more for the next workshop and the next workshop and the next workshop. The more I taught it, the better I knew that information. And then the more other people got to know that information as well. Teaching can be intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. So many people feel like they have to be an expert at something to start teaching something, and that is not true. Trust me. Uh, Sometimes teaching isn't necessarily a formal setting. It doesn't necessarily have to be this whole big presentation with a curriculum and homework and exercises or anything. Sometimes it's just briefly explaining something small. Sometimes it's just putting together like a lunch and learn for your team or a few people where you're saying, hey, I learned about this cool thing. I want to teach you about it. I want to tell you about it. Sometimes it's not even just speaking in front of people. It can be blogging or putting together short tips or tutorials or putting together a tweet. It could be answering questions on Stack Overflow. It could even be making short videos on a certain medium. The hosts earlier, they mentioned that I am on tech TikTok, which I am. But one thing that I've been doing for my company is I've actually been making short little videos where I just describe certain features to people as fast as I can. And I thought at first it would just kind of be a funny thing to kind of help advertise features for my company, but really by teaching these features to other people, I know our product a lot deeper than I thought I would, purely because I had to answer questions on it and I had to teach it to other people. And that's just a silly example, but there's so many other examples of this where if you just put together a blog post, you have to start thinking, okay, how do I make this clear to other people? Okay, if I'm putting together a tutorial, how do I make sure they don't miss anything? What pitfalls did I run through that I learned from that I can tell people to avoid? Teaching other people, it doesn't have to be about I'm an expert and I'm teaching you as a pupil. It can be teaching your peers. It can be teaching someone who knows a lot more than you. As long as you're teaching that concept and showing some other people that you know this concept enough to show them how to do it, that's really what's key there. And what also this all leads into is one of my favorite phrases, that repetition is recognition. It's a lot like practice makes perfect. The more you teach a concept, the more it solidifies, just like anything else. And again, like I mentioned before, questions can help refine what you teach. As people asked me questions, I was slowly refining the content that I taught and understanding it deeper so I could answer those questions better. And then any stumbling blocks that you might have can save you the next time that you teach. And a lot of times, probably half the talks that I've given at conferences and events are something that I've learned because I made a mistake. And I needed to figure out how I could fix that mistake and then move forward. And I can show that to people, and so that way they don't make that mistake again. And I really remember it because I'm telling people not to make that mistake again. There was one time where I ran into a really bad parsing bug, and it was actually during a talk I was giving. I was giving this talk, and it was this introduction to Vue.js, and I went into it really confident and everything, but I had never taught the concept before. And I was using an API that I was somewhat familiar with. And when I was teaching it, I ran into a parsing bug. And it was a live coding talk in front of like 300 people. I was freaking out, but I was trying to just kind of play it off, saying, okay, well, this was a learning experience, as I try to talk about, okay, well, if this isn't working, let me at least explain these other things. Having that stumbling block, it was embarrassing. I don't share that talk recording on purpose, but I have never run into that kind of parsing bug ever again. It was a learning experience. Even though I was teaching other people, it really just taught myself not to use that tool or not be prepared for a certain parsing bug, or really in this particular case, how to really use this particular API so I never run into that kind of parsing bug again. So really actively teach your community. This is combining all of these points together. Not only will your community benefit from what you have to say, but you will also benefit from the knowledge that only gets deeper through repetition, refinement, and discussion with other people. A community of people willing to teach each other without ego, that's key, is healthy and inclusive and beneficial to everyone. And being able to have that kind of giving of yourself and of your knowledge will encourage other people to do that as well. And it fosters an environment that will thrive and really just be a wonderful place to be. That being said, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And now it's Q&A time. You can feel free to tweet me or hang out on any of my repos or anything with Cassidy again on GitHub, on Twitter or whatever. But now it's time for questions in the chat.